TOLDOT. Generations. God's trumpet call presence. Encounter the living Messiah. TOLDOT. Generations. The word TOLDOT denotes a person's genealogy and progeny. Throughout the scriptures, we come across many genealogies. Scriptures record the genealogies of its characters. These records of generations are not mere genealogies and family trees, but they also present stories that speaks of characters within the genealogy. In this parsha, we find the story of Isaac and his children Jacob and Esau. Biblical toldots are important. The Bible records the genealogy of the Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach. Many clues about Messiah are found in the biblical toldots. We have seen in the previous chapters of the book of Genesis the stories of Abraham and Isaac foreshadow the Messiah. In the genealogy of the Messiah, at the very top of the toldot are the patriarchs. Their stories lay down patterns for Messiah. Messiah is the seed promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In Matthew chapter 1, there are 14 generations in all from Abraham to David, 14 from David to the exile to Babylon, and 14 from the exile to the Messiah. Matthew chapter 1, verse 1 to 17. Names of 5 women are mentioned in the genealogy of the Messiah. Tamar, who deceived Judah by posing as a prostitute. Rahab was a prostitute. Ruth visited Boaz by night at the threshing floor. Bathsheba had an adulterous relationship with David. In addition, Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and Bathsheba were all Gentiles. The 5th person, Mary, mother of Yeshua, whom God used in a unique way in his divine plan. Importance of the toldot. Genealogies. We find many genealogies in the Bible, and the frequency with which they appear tell us the importance of them. Genealogies help us to establish one's lineage, one's Jewishness, tribal identity, and one's right to the priesthood and one's right to kingship. For the Jewish people, this is of great importance. Since the return from the exile, racial purity was of great importance. Esther chapter 2, verse 59 to 63. An Israelite could name their immediate ancestors and know to which of the 12 tribes they belong to. For example, in Luke chapter 2, verse 36, it says, Anna, a prophetess from the tribe of Asher, who lived with her husband for 7 years before he died. It was necessary to prove the ancestry in order to exercise any civic rights or to be able to participate in the temple worship, particularly to serve as a priest. From the genealogies we find in the Hebrew scriptures, it becomes apparent that only the male line is traced and only men's names appear. There are very rare exceptions to this. Usually, the name of women are mentioned only in passing, because it's the head of the family, the father, who determined both national and tribal identity. And it was reason only his line was necessary. Only one genealogy is traced from the beginning to the end of the biblical history. That is the line of King David. In this genealogy, every name from Adam to David and every name after David up to Zerubbabel. This is also the messianic line. As the seed of the woman, Genesis 3:15, Messiah had to come out of humanity. As the seed of Abraham, Messiah had to come from the nation of Israel. As the seed of Judah, he had to be of the tribe of Judah, and as the seed of David, he had to be of the family of David. The pattern of genealogy in the Hebrew scriptures is followed in the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew chapter 1, verse 1 to 17, and Luke chapter 3, verse 23 to 38. These two genealogies tell us the story from a different perspective. Joseph plays an active role in Matthew's genealogy. Angels appearing to him, his thoughts, etc. are recorded. Miriam, Mary, play a passive role. As such, no record of angels appearing to Miriam and about her thoughts are recorded. Luke tells the same story from the perspective of Miriam. Genealogy of Matthew is that of Joseph, and the genealogy of Luke is that of Miriam. Why do we have two genealogies? Matthew gives the royal line and Luke gives the real line. Since seemingly Joseph was the heir apparent to David's throne and Yeshua was the adopted son of Joseph, Jesus could claim the right to David's throne. Luke's gospel gives us the real line, showing that Yeshua himself was the descendant of David through Miriam. He was a member of the house of David, but he could claim the right to sit on David's throne through Joseph, the heir apparent. Requirements for kingship in Hebrew scriptures. The need for two genealogies can be understood by considering the two requirements for kingship in the Hebrew scriptures. These requirements were developed after the division of the kingdom, after the death of King Solomon. One applicable to the southern kingdom of Judah with its capital in Jerusalem. The other, northern kingdom of Israel with its capital in Samaria. Davidic descendancy to the throne of Judah a must. Only a member of the house of David will sit on David's throne. There was a conspiracy to do away with the house of David. Isaiah chapter 7 verse 5 to 6. But Adonai warned that many such conspiracy was doomed to failure. Isaiah chapter 8 verse 9 to 15. Succession to the throne of Israel is by divine appointment or by prophetic sanction. Those who attempted to rule on Samaria's throne without prophetic sanction was assassinated. Taking into consideration these two biblical requirements for kingship and what is stated in the two genealogies in Gospel of Matthew and Gospel of Luke, Yeshua HaMashiach's right to the throne of David can be resolved. In Matthew's genealogy, he included 4 women, namely Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and Bathsheba, breaking the Jewish tradition and custom. According to the Talmud, a mother's family is not to be called a family. Luke 2 mentioned few women, but they are not the prominent women in the genealogy of Yeshua. Why did Matthew include these women in the genealogy? What was common to them were Tamar was a Canaanite, Rahab was also a Canaanite, and Ruth a Moabitess. They were all Gentiles. Probably true of Bathsheba also, for Uriah, her husband, was a Hittite. Matthew included the names of these 4 women to show that while the main purpose of the coming of Yeshua was to save the lost sheep of the house of Israel, the Gentiles too will benefit from his coming. In the scriptures we find Bathsheba guilty of adultery. Rahab was guilty of prostitution and Tamar was guilty of incest. Matthew points out that the purpose of Messiah's coming was also to save sinners. In most cultures around the world, women are helpless. In the genealogy of Messiah, the women are pulled inside. and Gentiles are not an afterthought in God's plan. The four women, Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and Bathsheba, found themselves outside the normal structure of patriarchal society, and all four were restored and brought under the protection of God's care. All four in some way foreshadowed Mary's role of being an unmarried mother, who would also have suffered the stigma of bearing an illegitimate child and therefore being alienated from the society. Mark chapter 6 verse 3 described Yeshua as son of Mary, suggesting that his father was unknown. Mary too came under the protection of God because she gave birth to her son under unusual circumstances. Joseph, Yeshua's father. As mentioned earlier, Matthew's genealogy breaks with tradition in that he skips names. Matthew traces the line of Joseph, the stepfather of Yeshua. He goes back into the history and working towards his own time. He starts tracing the line with Abraham, verse 2, and continues to David, verse 6. Solomon is chosen, verse 6, out of David's sons. And genealogy is traced to King Jeconiah, verse 11, one of the last kings before the Babylonian captivity. From Jeconiah, verse 12, genealogy is traced to Joseph, verse 16. Joseph, a son of David through Solomon and through Jeconiah. This mention is significant because a curse was pronounced on Jeconiah in Jeremiah chapter 22, verse 24 to 30. After Jeremiah's curse, the requirement for messianic lineage limited further, and messianic lineage was to be of the house of David, but apart from Jeconiah. Joseph was not the apparent heir the throne and had the blood of Jeconiah and was not qualified to sit on David's throne. This indicates that the sons of Joseph will not have the right to claim the throne of David. If Yeshua was the real son of Joseph, he would have been disqualified from sitting on David's throne. Also, he would not be able to claim the right to David's throne by virtue of his adoption by Joseph, since Joseph was not the heir apparent. Matthew starts the gospel with Jeconiah problem and then proceeds with the account of the virgin birth. Yeshua was not Joseph's son, for he was born of the virgin Miriam. Matthew chapter 1 verse 18 to 25. Luke followed Jewish procedure and custom in the genealogy of Messiah. He does not omit names, nor include names of women, but trace her line by using the name of her husband. Precedents found in Ezra chapter 2:61 and Nehemiah chapter 7 verse 63. The only way to find out whether the genealogy were that of the husband or that of the wife is the use of the definite article in the text. In the Greek text of Luke's genealogy, every single name has the Greek definite article the, except with the name of Joseph. Luke chapter 3 verse 23. And the reader would understand by the missing definite article from Joseph's name that this was not really Joseph's genealogy, but it is of his wife Miriam's. Luke chapter 3 verse 23 is translated as being supposedly the son of Joseph, the son of Eli, because the Greek definite article is removed before the name of Joseph. The verse can be translated as be the son, as was supposed, of Joseph the son of Heli. The verse read that although Yeshua was supposed or assumed to be the descendant of Joseph, he was really the descendant of Heli. Heli was the father of Miriam. Absence of Miriam's name is in keeping with the Jewish practices on genealogies. The Jerusalem Talmud recognized this genealogy as that of Miriam and not of Joseph. Luke begins his genealogy with his own time. He begins saying, Yeshua, when he began his ministry, was about 30 years of age, being the son, as was supposed, of Joseph, the son of Heli. And then he goes back into history all the way to Adam. It comes to the family of David. In verse 31 to 32, instead of Solomon, Luke includes Nathan in the genealogy. Both Joseph and Miriam are of the house of David. But Miriam was of the house of David apart from Jeconiah. Yeshua too was from the house of David but apart from Jeconiah. Yeshua fulfilled the biblical requirements for kingship. Luke begins the gospel with the virgin birth because Luke's genealogy did not include Jeconiah's name. He records Yeshua's genealogy in describing Yeshua's public ministry. There were other descendants who were members of the house of David and apart from Jeconiah, who could claim equality with Yeshua to the throne of David. But only Yeshua fulfilled the second biblical requirement for kingship. Only Yeshua received divine appointment. Luke chapter 1 verse 30 to 33. Yeshua could claim the throne of David because he was a member of the house of David apart from Jeconiah, and he alone received the divine appointment to that throne. Some say that Yeshua was not a descendant of David through his father. He cannot be Messiah and King. But Messiah was supposed to be different. In Genesis chapter 3:15 itself, it was proposed that Messiah would be the seed of the woman. And prophet Isaiah in chapter 7 verse 14 prophesied that the Messiah would be born of a virgin. Yeshua the Messiah received his humanity entirely from his mother because there was no human father. His nationality and his tribal identity came entirely from his mother. These genealogies present a fourfold portrait of the messianic person through four titles. Matthew chapter 1 verse 1, Yeshua is called the son of David and the son of Abraham. Son of David means that Yeshua is king. As the son of Abraham, it means that Jesus is a Jew. In Luke chapter 3 verse 38, he is called the son of Adam and the son of God. Son of Adam means Yeshua, Jesus, is a man. As a son of God, it means that Yeshua, Jesus, is God. Abraham's son. The paternity of the Messiah also matters. Here is the history of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac, Genesis chapter 25, verse 19. The verse first says, Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac. Targum explains that it is because of the unique relationship between Abraham and Isaac. According to Rashi, God made Isaac's facial features similar to those of Abraham, and thus all could testify that Abraham was Isaac's father, and that is what it is meant by what is written here. Isaac was the son of Abraham, for there is evidence that Abraham was indeed the father of Isaac. Yeshua HaMashiach said, a true son of Abraham does the deeds of Abraham. John chapter 8 verse 39. He also said, he who has seen me has seen the Father. In Matthew chapter 1 verse 1, Yeshua HaMashiach is referred to as the son of Abraham. and as the seed of Abraham in Genesis chapter 3 verse 16. Adonai's promise to Abraham and Sarah was a son who would be their heir to Abraham's legacy and fulfillment of covenantal promises. This promise can be compared to the promise of the Messiah. Both Isaac and Yeshua HaMashiach were sons of the promise that God gave to Abraham in many ways. The story of Isaac prefigures the story of Yeshua, the Messiah. Isaac gave his father Abraham the consent to sacrifice him like a lamb on the altar. Yeshua, the Messiah, willingly, in obedience to the Father in heaven, gave himself up to endure the cross and the grave. Isaiah chapter 53 verse 7, it says, "He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before his shears is silent, so he did not open his mouth." Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac secured the covenantal promises for Abraham and his seed. In Genesis chapter 22, verse 16 to 18, it states, "He said, I have sworn by myself, says Adonai, that because you have done this, because you haven't withheld your son, your only son, I will most certainly bless you, and I will most certainly increase your descendants to as many as there are stars in the sky or grains of sand on the seashore. Your descendants will possess the cities of their enemies, and by your descendants all the nations of the earth will be blessed, because you obeyed my order." Maternity of the Messiah. Sarah could conceive a child only through a miracle. Sarah's miraculous conception of Isaac too hints towards Messiah. In the Bible, we find many stories about barren women who conceived miraculously and gave birth to children. Many times, God answered the prayers of the barren women with a miraculous conception. Often, her child was singled out from the children conceived and born in an ordinary manner. For an infertile woman to conceive and give birth is a supernatural event. Often, these children have a divine destiny. How much more then the story of Miriam? Mary's virgin conception without human agency indicate the divine destiny of Miriam's child. Stories of Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah are unique. Their stories point towards the mother of Yeshua the Messiah. Rebecca became one of the mothers of Messiah.